Chapter 15, Whispering Jack Phantom. I'm not ashamed or afraid to hash over those early days. I'm not ashamed of Sadie and the years that followed. But as I've said, a lot of the work I did meant I wasn't taken seriously. I was treated like a pretty voice puppet. That was hard to cope with because all I've ever wanted to do was be a professional singer with credibility. I knew my time with LRV had ended well before it was over. I finally went to Glenn and said, I want to leave this band. And when I spoke those words, I instantly felt relieved. Finally, the pressure of being a part of someone else's band would be lifted. But I still had the pressure of having to earn a living. I needed to go out and work and make money to support my family and pay back my debts. But I still wanted to try and be at least honest about what I do. I needed to feel comfortable and happy about where I was going, what I was doing and how I was going to do it. Glenn was a very entrepreneurial man. He couldn't help himself. He was always busy with lots of irons in the fire. He gave me a chance with Uncovered and then another with the Little River Band. When that was all over, he agreed to back me again. He said, let's make another album. I'll support you. But before he did, he wanted to know that I was committed. He had a lot to lose because records weren't cheap to make. They're still not cheap. You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a whim, on a bet. It's almost like gambling. In his business dealings, Glenn had already taken on some extensive debts, so he needed to know I was committed and ready to do the work. In turn, I needed to know that he was committed because I was in my own little piece of horror. We promised each other to make it work the best we could. The trials of LRV and everything I had ever done professionally strengthened me to make what I considered was probably a last-ditch effort, my final chance to do it on my own. But before I could put my heart into another album, I needed to get myself together. All that time away from home in America and the tension in LRV had taken its toll, and so had the financial pressure I was under. I don't think of myself as a down sort of a person, but sometimes I do get a little bit blue. Jill knows me back to front, and she's always there for me. She could see my head wasn't in a good place, and so she sat me down and we had a chat. She helped pick me up. She said, you got to do this. Go ahead, do it. My response was, I'm not sure I can. And Jill said, yes, you can. I didn't argue. Instead, I set about getting my head on straight. I was doing this. In preparing to record, Glenn shopped around some of the big-name producers in the business. He had some interest from the American superstar producer Quincy Jones, and this is the guy who produced Michael Jackson's Thriller, the best-selling album of all time. Glenn was talking to Quincy, but because of the dates available, Quincy could only give the project a small amount of his time. It wasn't enough, and to be honest, the thought of working with such a big name got me worried. I felt that I was going to be right back in the same situation I'd always been in, where the producer would call all the shots. With someone like Quincy Jones, how could I disagree if he wanted to do something a different way to me? He had the experience and the runs on the board. All I had was my instincts, and too often in the past I doubted myself. I think, okay, and do what I was asked, even if it didn't sit right. I respect people's talent. I respect their judgment and their criticisms. I'm happy to take it, but for this album, I needed to be the one who decided what I was singing and how I sang it. For this to work, I needed to do that for myself. I knew Ross Fraser. He'd been doing the front of stage sound for LRV. At some point, he was also a guitar techie. So when Glenn recommended Ross as the producer for this new album, I thought he was an interesting choice. Ross hadn't done a great deal of producing before, but he felt like the right choice. He's as dry as bone, Ross. When we started rehearsing and then recording the album, I'd bleed from every orifice trying to sing a song, and I'd say, you want me to sing it again? And he'd go, eh. I used to want to kill him. It became a bit of a joke, actually, though. I'd do a take and then I'd say, rub that out, I'll do another one just for Ross. It became a backward and forward thing, which was fun, and it kicked me on. It made me work and make decisions. Putting musicians together for a record is really important, but I needed something even more for this record. I needed collaborators and people who would inspire me, listen to me, and work with me. We needed a keyboard player. And with David Hirschfelder, I got that and so much more. David played the keyboards in LRV when I was in the band, and we got on well. If Hershey had a solo on a piano, he would get up and work it. He and I were showmen rather than just performers, and even when that was frowned upon by the others, it didn't stop either of us. On top of being a bit of a show-off, David is the best. He's just so clever. He isn't just a piano player. He is an arranger, composer and musical savant. He was inspired by what I was trying to do too, and I think he did himself proud as well. Doug Brady ended up being the engineer when we finally got into the studio at Armstrong's. Doug's a lovely guy. As a matter of fact, he's in the other booth at the moment recording this book. Hi, Dougie. His older brother is Mike Brady, who was the M in the band MPD Limited. Dougie was, and still is, an incredible engineer. He really knows his way around the studio and he helped me enormously. Doug Brady is right inside the album too. I love you. Ross, David and I wanted to work together, and so we needed somewhere to get started. And Jill and I had already sold our Chester Street house to pay all our debts, so we were renting a house on Manningham Road in Bulleen. The house was on a main road, and it was nothing like our dear little house in Chester Street. But money was tight, and so it was where we needed to be. I was comfortable there, and it cost us nothing more, so we decided to set up pre-production in the garage. David came over and set up his Fairlight computer machine instrument, Series 2. This was basically a digital synthesizer, sampler, and digital audio workstation. An Australian invention, that machine was part of the early digital music revolution. The first time I had seen and heard of Fairlight was when I supported Stevie Wonder's Australian tour. Stevie was one of the first people in the world to own and work with one, and the sound, combined with his voice, blew me away. I had a few bits and pieces of equipment, and Ross had a drum machine, and Doug Brady borrowed an 8-track machine for us to muck around with in the garage. But it was David and all his amazing musical instruments that would really set the tone for the album. David was only young, but he loved his technology, and he was incredibly clever, really, really, really clever. I wanted to try something different, and I wanted to try something new. And the Fairlight was an expensive piece of equipment, and David knew how to work it. You could take a sample of your voice, or of anything, and plug it into the Fairlight, and it sounded amazing. One of the guys at the recording studio owned a Porsche, and had driven it over to my place, and we wondered what it would sound like if we sampled it. So we recorded the Porsche door being closed and then being slammed. I can't remember if we used it in the album or not, but it sounded great. The Fairlight gave the sample depth, guts and shape. It was amazing. David was a genius, and his enthusiasm was unrestrained. We'd be in the garage working, and David would be tinkering on his Fairlight, and I'd be tinkering around on a keyboard, and quick as a flash, he'd pick up on something. I'd look up, and I'd be shunted onto the couch. His excitement at embellishing an idea would take over, and he'd manoeuvre me off the keys to continue exploring it. It was hilarious, and his ideas were wonderful. We were in a cabal, Ross, David and I, doing what we were doing in secret. Jill was upstairs with baby Robert. She'd occasionally pop down with a tray of tea and some biscuits, but generally she left us alone to do what we did. It wasn't a fess-up or anything like that. We treated it like a full-time job. Ross and David were both coming into the garage each day, not at 8 o'clock in the morning, more like 10 or 11 o'clock, musicians' time. We never had a set time. It wasn't work between 10 and 7 or anything like that. We worked until we thought we'd reached the limit or until one of us had had enough for the day. That's the way I still work. If I'm doing anything with the band, rehearsing or anything, and someone's over it or tired, I'll say, let's finish, and we'll take it up again the next day. We drank a lot of tea and smoked a lot of cigarettes. I had a cigarette in my hand 90% of the time I was awake. Bloody crazy. Glenn would occasionally come in and have a bit of a listen. Just because we had drum machines, a Fairlight and sequencers, all sorts of stuff, it didn't mean I wanted to make a techno-pop album. I squashed that idea from the beginning and said, we're not making disco music here. Not that there was anything wrong with disco, just not me. We set about using the technology wisely, but I was starting to get stressed. I couldn't stop worrying. What if this album failed? I mean, what would I do? Despite those worries, I believed in the process, and frankly, I was fortunate that I was able to surround myself with the best people I could. Without David's input, without Dougie's input, without Ross's input, without Glenn and all the musicians who worked with me on the album, it would never have come together. That's stating the bleeding obvious, isn't it? But first, we had to find the songs. I had hundreds of songs, hundreds of them on cassettes from all over the place. Some of them had already been recorded by other people, so they were out. It was difficult to get hot songs, like the really, really great songs from the top writers. They weren't going to give me their best songs because I wasn't selling albums. I mean, if you've written a song and you get a chance to give it to Madonna or Tina Turner or Shania Twain or me, at that point, who are you going to give it to? Fucking not me. That's the way it runs. I understood that. I was looking for something that grabbed me. A lot of the time, people press play on a song, and if it doesn't grab them in the first 4 or 8 bars, they turn it off. I decided that the least I could do, as a courtesy to the writer, was to listen to the song the whole way through. By doing this, I also figured that if I found a part of the song that I liked, I might have loved the chorus or the bridge, or I might have loved the first verse. My thinking was I could always talk to the writer and say, hey, I love what you've done here. Can you get further into that part of it, please? Oh, yeah. I'd listen to them all the way through. And it was very, very time-consuming, but it was worth doing it that way. It really was. One song I vividly recall rejecting was the Bernie Taupin and Martin Page song, We Built This City, which was recorded by Starship. The demo was amazing, and it definitely grabbed Ross and David, but it wasn't one for me. Thankfully, Ross and David respected my opinion. I mean, if your heart's not in it, then you're not going to do it properly. And after a career of forcing myself to sing songs that weren't really me, I didn't want to do that anymore. The album started to take shape. We wrote a couple of songs, and I was kicking myself that I didn't save Playing to Win for myself. But there you go. There was a bit of album fodder in there. No One Comes Close and Pressure Down were among the best that we had available to us at the time. Pressure Down and Reasons were both really good songs. I loved singing those kind of songs, and the bass line that David devised for Pressure Down was great. Harry Vagdanovs, or the publisher, I can't remember which, played us the demo to Pressure Down, and it was such a quirky little song. I liked the lyrics, I liked the melody, and after David Hirschfelder worked on it through his Fairlight and sequencer, I loved it. In my opinion, up to that point, Pressure Down was the strongest song we had. The album could have been called Pressure Down, and as far as radio fodder went, we felt it was a strong contender, which was exciting because it had been years since the radio stations had played any of my songs. Ross Wilson from Mondo Rock gave us A Touch of Paradise. They'd already released it, so ours was a cover. But Ross was gracious and said he liked our version, which is always very gratifying to hear from a songwriter. Sitting in that garage with Ross and David for the first time in my career, I got to sing and be me in a way I wanted to sing and be me. I tried to put my heart into every beat of every bar of every song. I don't want to sound pompous, but you'll find that most artists do the best they can in the time they have to do it. I tried. I really tried. And Glenn backed me. He never interfered artistically. He just backed us to get it all together. In that garage, we did the work and recorded all the tracks as demos to take into the studio. Come to think of it, those demos are probably still around somewhere. I've probably got them in a box in a cupboard somewhere at home. Then, about 2 weeks before we were due to go into the studio, I got a tape. It came from the publishers through Glenn's office, and it had You're the Voice on it. I put it in the tape deck, pressed play. Jesus, it was so me. It says power, power to the people. It's a very powerful song if you look at it. I never really looked at it as a political song, but if you look at it that way, it plants fair dinkum right there in your heart. I just felt that I could sing it, and I said, yeah, this is me. I want this song now. I want it. This is mine. Please let it happen. I don't often think about sliding door moments, but this song changed so many lives in such positive ways that it kills me. It just kills me. It helped Glenn through all his monetary problems. It helped me through mine. It's put our kids through school. All sorts of wonderful things happened because of that song. No singer wants to be defined by one song, but that particular song had everything I could wish for as a singer. It had great lyrics, a great melody line. I loved the chord progression. It means a lot to me, and as soon as I heard the first little beats, which David eventually turned into the famous clap, 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 I got goosebumps. And it's real hard to forget the whoa, whoa, whoa. But seriously, it means a lot to me for all different reasons, and I still get emotional when I sing it. When I heard the demo that first time, I heard bagpipes for the solo section in my head. I told Ross and David, and they both went, "Fucking bagpipes?" I said, "Yeah, bagpipes." I've always loved the Beatles, but as far as Australian bands go, AC/DC is phenomenal. Bon Scott was a great singer. He had a great voice. I loved Bon. I read something yesterday. There was a bit of press saying that the original singer, Dave Evans, the one before Bon, was the best singer that the band had. I beg to differ, mate. Bon Scott was amazing. I only met him very briefly, and I didn't know the guy, but I admired his talent. He had a great, great voice. AC/DC is so good, and Bon was able to cap it off. I'd love to have seen Bon live. I loved his version of It's a Long Way to the Top, If You Want to Rock and Roll. I love that song too. It's an absolute Aussie classic, and the bagpipes in it really work for me. Later, I'd often sing it in my sets when I was touring. We already had the bagpipes out for You're the Voice, so I figured we might as well use them again. It's a 2-for-1. Fucking bagpipes. David saw I was serious. He said, "Bagpipes." Wow, okay. And Hirschfelder is a bloody genius. He had to redo the whole arrangement of the song so that the bagpipes would sit perfectly in it. No one said no to us recording You're the Voice at the time. Chris Thompson, one of the writers of the song, said some things that felt pretty mean to me early in the piece, and apparently he didn't want me to record the song because he had doubts about my credibility. I never heard from the other songwriters. Chris's comments upset me, but they didn't stop me. We went out of our way to pick the best songs that we possibly could out of the thousands of songs that we got. And as I said earlier, none of the big songwriters were forthcoming with their finer songs because I wasn't selling millions of albums. We finished pre-production in the garage and then moved into the studio for production. I don't like having people in the studio when I'm singing, and as I've told you, it's my thing. I get paranoid when I'm in the booth doing my vocals. Getting over that red light fever is something every recording artist has to do. It can really restrict you if you're not willing to really give it a shot and fall off or hold back. If you do that, it's never going to work. Generally, you'd sing a song about 15 or 20 times to warm up, then you really get going. Like I said earlier, I'd be bleeding from every orifice and I'd go, "How was that?" And Ross would just go, meh. I'd think, what more could I give it? Laying down vocals can get a bit taxing. You have this insane pressure to get it done properly. With this album, I wanted to push myself. I'd recorded the vocals to You're the Voice, and as far as I was concerned, it was done. But I took it home to see how it felt to live with for a few days, just in case. After those couple of days, I wasn't happy with my vocals on the song. I needed to do it again. Glenn and Gaynor had been out to some fancy dinner and they were all frocked up when they came into the studio. They'd listened to the latest production version and weren't totally hooked. Them being there gave me the kick in the arse that I needed. I went into the booth and really put some blood in it, and it worked. It felt amazing. I sang You're the Voice at full voice rather than falsetto. Because of being a smoker, my falsetto was terrible anyway. Now that I've quit smoking, my falsetto is back, which makes me happy. It's no good to me at the moment, but it's back. I guess this is the time when you tell the truth about how the album got the name Whispering Jack. My nickname among some is Jack Phantom. I got that name on a trip to America with Danny Finley and Colin Hewitt. Our mutual friend, Loretta, took us all to this African-American soul club in Los Angeles, and we were the only white folks there. Loretta knew Alex Love, the singer, hosting the evening, and she went up to him and whispered in his ear that her friend, the singer, Johnny Farnham, was in the audience. And then Alex announced over the PA, "Ladies and gentlemen, This evening we have in the audience the great Australian singer, Johnny Phantom. Alex took me up on stage. I was too nervous to sing, but we laughed our bloody heads off. The mix-up was silly and very funny. Over time, Johnny became Jack, like my granddad, but Phantom stuck. So I was called Jack Phantom by Danny and Colleen and some others as the years went on. But there's more. Ted Lowe was an English snooker commentator for the BBC, and because of his husky brush tones, he was given the nickname Whispering Ted. I had a little Walkman. Remember those portable cassette decks? Well, during the Uncovered tour, to pass the time between gigs, I would narrate things into the Walkman in the same style as Whispering Ted. Only I would narrate really mundane things like the guys eating breakfast or shaving or someone walking toward me. I narrated every bloody thing I could. If we were in a pub, I'd narrate what was happening around me with earnest seriousness, and I'd sign off, "That's all from Whispering Jack Phantom." I ditched the Phantom part, but decided to call the album Whispering Jack. When Glenn and I started working together, from the start, I always called him Boss. I'd say, "Hey, Boss, what's happening?" It was a term of endearment. Throughout the production of the album, Glenn was a source of inspiration. He'd come in, have a listen, and be blown away by what he heard. It was exactly the kind of encouragement we needed, and it helped me a lot, I must admit. When the album was finished, we ran off some dubs from the 12-inch tapes to cassettes and hand-wrote the track listing on them. Glenn tossed me a cassette and asked me to sign it, which I did. I said, "I love you, boss. Thanks for giving me the chance to do this. Glenn, you are the best. John, I love you." It was done. The album was finished. It had a name, and so it was time for a listening party for everyone who'd worked on the album, plus a small selection of industry colleagues. I was freaking out and terrified. I didn't want to go. Jill and I drove to the studio in this little Mazda that we'd bought for $300 off a friend. The whole way there, I was curled up in a ball under the dashboard on the passenger side, sobbing again. I was completely forlorn and saying to Jill, "I can't do this. I really don't want to do this. I can't go in. I can't." I didn't want to face anyone. I had no idea what people would think of the album and how it would be received more widely, and it mattered so much to me. For so many years, I tried to be strong. I tried to keep it together, but Jill and I were broke. We had a young son, and we were surviving on the goodness of others. In that car on the way to the studio, it all came to a head. It was either yes or no for me. There was no middle ground. Everything was riding on this album. The thought of failure, that people wouldn't like it or wouldn't respond to it, was too much for me. That fear was paralysing. As always, though, Jill was right there beside me. She was willing me along. She kept her eyes on the road and said, "Come on now, let's go and we'll see what happens. We'll just go along and accept what will be."